but he goes to the refrigerator to try to grab some lasagna, and he knows something's really wrong. He nearly drops it. It's a pretty heavy dish, but surely he should be able to lift up lasagna, and he couldn't. So something was wrong, and it was time for him to figure something out. But he still comes back to work, and the agents tell him just stay on the apron to avoid hurting himself, and he agrees he just won't take any bumps. But of course, eventually he hears a crack, and this is not good. They sent him to get an MRI, and they found out he had a ruptured disc in his neck, a cracked vertebrae, and pinched nerves, and they line up neck surgery right away. Why does it take so long to get an MRI? I mean, I know this is a different era, but it's almost like a badge of honor to fucking not go get checked out in this era. Is it not?
Well, yeah, it is. And it's lack of communication. Again, if he's not telling us that he's hurt and he's experiencing these things, we're not mind readers. We can't go and say everybody after every single bump, oh, go have an MRI because we think you're hurt. You're telling me you're fine. You're not having any symptoms. So there's no need for us to be concerned. If you don't know, you can't do anything about it.
Man, this is where the story gets weird. He says after he'd been booked for the neck surgery, he gets a call from the office saying they need him to fly to LA to do a cameo on Tough Eough 3. He says his arm is basically numb and he's uncomfortable with it, but agrees to do it because that's just what he does. He says he goes out and meets the guy in charge, Big. He says, I know you're in pain and you're going to have surgery tomorrow, so I don't want you getting in the ring. And I said, we'd see. And if I needed to get in there, I'll get in there. But the plan was for him to just be there as an advisor of sorts. So he's there doing some talking, giving some advice. And towards the end of the day, he watches the guys in the ring. He says they were doing a round robin thing where they would tag in, do some spots, and then tag out. They're all laughing and joking around, and that was it. I started to get pissed off at these wannabes. Wrestling is supposed to be serious. Since they hadn't listened to what I said earlier, I felt the need to educate these kids physically. There's a time and a place for kidding around and having a good time, and it's not when you're in front of a television camera. I take wrestling seriously and wasn't about to let these little fuckers act like goofballs. When I got in there, I'm sure they could see in my eyes I was not fixing to laugh and have a good time. I was there to work and teach these kids what the wrestling business was all about. Matt Capitelli happened to be in there when I got in. I knocked him down in the corner and started stomping on him. As I've said a million times already, I work stiff, but I don't set out to hurt people. He was flailing around trying to move, and I wanted him to stay down, but he was not following my lead. Anybody who wrestles knows if you're in the ring with someone more experienced than you, then you go where he puts you, and he controls what happens. Capitelli should have known it too, but he still squirmed and tried to get up. He ended up getting a boot in the mouth, which busted it open. The producers from MTV wanted Big to step in and stop the match, but he told them not to be stupid. It's part of wrestling. I guess it got too real for MTV. What do you remember about this incident, what you heard about it, and what you thought when you saw it? Did you see it on TV, a tape ahead of time? What are people in the office saying?
There was no controversy about this at all until it aired. So there was no talk. There was no buzz about this until it actually aired on MTV. It was no big deal. You know, it's part of wrestling, and it was part of something, you know, the way that we were brought up. It was a different way to be trained. It was a different way to learn the business. And I think if you were to poll every old timer in the business, they would all agree with the way that Bob Holly handled it. Here's the reality of the situation. Times were changing, and you cannot expect the talent today and or even at that time to go through the business and go through the learning process the same way that all the old timers went through. It's just not real. The fact that they have a performance center where they can go and they can train, and they have actual trainers and doctors on staff, and they, you know, they're physically fit. They go through every aspect with these guys now. They're bused to the towns in beautiful coaches. They have catering. You know, we had none of that starting out in the business. It's a different business, and the business was changing then. You can't apply the same training methods that were done 30 years ago to the talent of today, and even then. So Bob was doing what he knew. And again, it wasn't an uproar. There was no controversy about it until it actually aired. And the Dave Meltzer's, oh, this is terrible, how he would rough it up. But then that was all accentuated and that was all amplified for the story.
It's TV.
It's TV. Exactly. So then that, again, guys, that's part of the angle. I hate to tell you.
Well, I mean, listen, everybody knows that reality TV is going to try to turn something nothing into something. No, but
shut up.
Still, I mean, I get how if you're not, well, let me just read his book. Sure, I got rough with him. I'll admit it, but I'm rough with everybody. I took it upon myself to teach him what wrestling is like. Wrestling is a rough business. I didn't bust his nose or do anything to him that hasn't been done to me or wouldn't be done to him at some point in his career. But the next day they filmed Matt Capitelli crying like a little fucking girl, saying he wanted to go home because he'd been roughed up a little bit. He had a black eye and a busted lip. I can't tell you how many black eyes and busted lips I've had, and not once did I ever complain about it. And here was this kid on a show called Tough Eough, and he was ready to go home because he got a little hurt. They ended up talking him into staying, and they should have let him quit as far as I'm concerned. If he was going to go on TV and cry about me being rough with him, he had no business in the wrestling business. Years later, he ended up with a brain tumor, and I felt really bad for him, but he would have never made it in this business. I knew it because of the way he carried on after his run-in with me. He didn't think getting hurt was part of the business. Are you fucking kidding me? I was there with cracked vertebrae and a shattered goddamn disc in my neck, about to go into surgery the next day. And I'm in there teaching him how to work, getting on with it. And he got his lip busted open and he wants to quit the business. Wrestling was definitely not for him. To be completely honest, I was not much rougher on Matt than I was with anybody else. I was pretty much the same with everybody. When I'm a little bit rougher with somebody now and then, it's to test them to see if they can take it. I'd seen Matt in training earlier that day, and although he was decent enough for what skills he had, good enough to make it, my whole perspective on him changed when I saw him whining on TV. I lost all respect for him right there. I felt like saying, come on, this isn't fucking kindergarten. Grow up. Your reaction?
Well, that's Bob's view, and I can actually appreciate that view. I can also appreciate a guy that, when you're brought into a business and you're told, hey, now this is a work, and they think that a work is not getting hurt. They think that a work is that nothing's going to hurt, I guess, is the best way to describe it. That's not the case. What they do hurts. It hurts bad, and it's not easy. So if you can't take it, maybe this isn't for you. I do disagree with him on Capitelli, as far as I thought Capitelli did have a future in the business. And I liked his personality, and I thought that, there was maybe something that we could have done with him. And unfortunately, cancer got a hold of him before anybody would ever really know that. And, he's been dealt a really shitty hand of cards right now, but, he's toughing it out and getting going. But for Bob Holly, in a lot of respects, that just helped and added to a persona on television that you could then just exploit and build off of that, for being a bully, because people saw it on a reality show. So you know what? That must be real.
Right. Did Bob get any heat from the office over this?
No.
Do you think he should have at all?
No. See, here's the thing. If there's going to be any heat about it, then they shouldn't have brought him out there, and they should have stopped it immediately.
Right.
So then the responsibility goes back there. But I think that in that environment, at that time, for that TV show, for everything else that was going on, I thought it was good TV. And I thought it was, a guy that was brought up one way, trying to teach someone else the way that he was brought up. And if they didn't like that, then they should have stopped it then. And that's how I feel about it.
Let's talk about this. The next day he gets neck surgery. I think that gets lost in the story. But when he's out, Vince calls him to check on him, and so does Brock. Allegedly, Brock calls a few times to apologize again and check on him, and he keeps telling him not to worry. But this is sort of something we hear a lot, that whenever a guy comes out of surgery, Vince calls and checks on him. Is that a real big priority for Vince?
Yes. Yeah. He wants to know, and he wants them to know that he's accessible. And I don't know if it happens as much today, but I'd be willing to bet that it probably still does.
So Bob's ready to come back in October of 2003, and he's sent to OVW to sort of start the process. And of course, right away, Jim Cornette sees money and puts him in an angle with Matt Capitelli. And Keller reported, Ohio Valley Wrestling has built a major feud on its TV show around the incident on Tough Eough 3, where Bob Holly roughed up Matt Capitelli, a student early in his training. The October 4th TV show built up to a TV main event this past weekend where Capitelli beat Holly by DQ. And the October 4th angle saw Cornette interview Holly, making his return to TV after a long absence from injury. This is fucking booking 101. Great stuff here by Cornette, is it not?
Yeah, of course. You got two guys that, you know, people saw on, quote, again, reality television that they believe is real. Man, that's reality based. So you capitalize on it.